Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Hallelujah. We thank the Most High Yahuwah, and we thank Him for His precious Son, Yashra'al. We thank Him for His goodness, kindness, and His mercy on today. And we're going to go ahead and get ready to start our service, and we will have the blowing of the shofar by Zazakan Gabaryahu, and immediately after the blowing of the shofar, we will have our slow-mo to bring us in with prayer, and then we will proceed and go into our lesson. Let everybody stand. I'm going to turn towards the east, facing Jerusalem, and we'll have the blowing of the shofar by Zazakan Gabaryahu.
Safe travels to keep your Shabbat set apart. I pray that we listen and understand the dynamic lesson that Moreh is about to give us. Be right upon our hearts. Praise your set apart name. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Before we get started, we want to give honor to our senior Moreh, Kasada by Yashra'al, and Hidisha Sadiqwa. We thank the Most High for them, Most High giving them safe travel out to the congregation today, and thank the Most High for each and every last one of you. Just want to say I love each and every last one of you, always lifting you up in my prayers. And, you know, we're living in a season where inside of the congregation and outside, you know, Hashatan and his people, his constituents or whatever, they are trying their best to smear our image as a people. And you have to know what's going on right now. And I tell y'all, pay attention to society, what goes on around you. And if you notice, you hear a lot about reparations lately. It just seems to be the topic of conversation. But that's key to something. And I often like to tell people, you are not going to get reparations from the man. They're not just going to give it to you. Matter of fact, what they want to give you, I was listening to one politician, and she was talking about maybe the sum of about $100 billion. The United States of America has made trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars off of slavery. Not only slavery, when you come out of slavery, you still had to do it like, what was it? Jim Crow lasted about 94 years or 70?
Reconstruction before that.
The Reconstruction before then. The Jim Crow era, decades. I mean, it just so much you had to go, they could never repay you for that. And so when you hear so much about reparation nowadays, you got to know it's the Most High. We're living in a time now. Our deliverance is not as far off as people think it. There's some things to take place. So when you're dealing with reparation, you hear this conversation. Let me tell you something about the Most High. He gets it out there. And what he wants to do is make them acknowledge it. And they're going to acknowledge that there was a wrong done. And these people weren't repaid. Now with that, what you have to understand is judgment is coming to the nations. It's inevitable. It's coming. But you know, one thing you got to know about the Most High, when we go look at, and we read about like Sodom and Gomorrah, we read about when Israel was in Egypt. Now, you know the Most High don't just go up into a nation and just destroy them. He doesn't work like that. One thing he always will do, he will send a message to the nation by way of his witnesses, no matter who they are. And he will give that nation an opportunity to do what? The right thing, or make things right. Once he does that, if they don't hearken to with his word or meet his demands, whatever, then he brings about justice. And what you're seeing, the Most High told you, he's the redeemer of who? Of Yashra'al. Ain't no man gonna do it for you. Because first of all, there is not in him to do it for you. He wants to get it for you because you know what? He ain't gonna get you $1 trillion. He's gonna get everything for you. They'll never be able to give you what he want to get from you. He's gonna get it for you. And so that's why you gotta pay attention to what's going on. And we're living in a time we just really need to be mindful and be prayerful. And keep one another lifted up in prayers. But without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and go into this lesson. We're going to close this out today. We've been doing a series, a fundamental approach and understanding to the Hebrew Scriptures. And like I said, I did this because there were some disagreements or some concerns with some lessons that I taught by, some of the viewing audience or someone listening in. And I said a lot of people, and you don't fault the people, they've never known what they were reading. They had no understanding of what they were reading and what the book was about and who it was about. So we decided to do this series. And after I get through with this, I'm going to go ahead and deal with Isaiah 53 and the suffering servant. And that particular chapter, y'all might not know it, is very key to understanding the Scriptures. If you can understand what's going on in Isaiah 53, it will give you a very thorough understanding of what's going on in the good news, of what we call the New Testament. But in order to get the understanding of what's going on in Isaiah 53, we're going to have to go back to Leviticus and get an understanding. And so we're going to do this. I think it's imperative that we have that understanding and see what's going on. And it's one of the things, well, let me tell y'all something. As a community, as a body of believers living as a community, one thing you have to have is legislation to govern a body of people. And the Most High gave us that in the form of the law. The law, statutes, and commandments. But one thing that Israelites are guilty of is we focus so much on the law that we forget about the covenant of faith that he made with Abraham, which was passed on to Israel. And this is where we have gone wrong. We've put so much emphasis on the law till we can't even see the depths of what Hamashiach came to do for Israel.
That's good. That's good.
We just get along like he hasn't done really anything. It never even crosses our mind. But when we get through Isaiah 53, by the time we get through going into that, and you're going to realize, wait a minute. We can't look at him. We have to look at him in a different light and in a different manner. But we're going to deal with a lot, and Leviticus is the key to understanding that. And without any further ado, let's go. We're going to turn to Aliyahu 15 and 24. Aliyahu, Matthew 15 and 24. We're going to ask Zarzakan to go ahead and read for us.
Aliyahu or Matthew 15 verse 24. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Yashra'al.
Read again.
Matthew 15 and 24. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Yashra'al.
These are the words of Yashra'al. He said, I'm not sent but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Why was he sent to the house of Israel? Anybody?
Bring them back into covenant relationship with the Father.
Hallelujah. To bring them back into covenant relationship with the Father. Who sent them?
Father.
The Father. For what reason?
Bring them back into a covenant.
Bring it back into covenant relationship. Okay then. Let's go to Tehillim of Psalms 119, 172, and 173. Let's go down to 176 then.
119, 173 to 176.
172 to 176.
Tehillim or Psalms 119 verse 72. The law of your mouth is better unto me than thousands of gold and silver. Your hands have made me and fashioned me. Give me understanding that I may learn your way, your commandments. They that fear you will be glad when they see me, because I have hoped in your word. I know, Yahuwah, that your judgments are right, and that you in faithfulness have afflicted me. Let, I pray you, your merciful kindness be for my comfort, according to your word, unto your servant.
You with the 76?
Yep.
Okay then. 119.
119, 72 to 76.
Read 76 for me again.
Psalms 119, verse 76.
Psalm 176.
Oh. Okay. 172 to 176.
Yeah, 172 to 176.
Okay.
Oh, okay. 119.
What the
Yeah,
heck?
you said 72. I thought you said 72 to 76. What's that? Okay, wait a minute. Hold on now. Okay, now we got it.
Yeah, whatever you're doing.
Yeah. Okay, Tehillim or Psalms 119, verse 172. My tongue shall speak of thy word, for all thy commandments are righteousness. Let thine hand help me, for I have chosen thy precepts. I have longed for thy salvation, O Yahuwah, and thy law is my delight. Let my soul live, and it shall praise thee, and let your judgments help me. I have gone astray like a lost sheep. Seek thy servant, for I do not forget your commandments.
Yes, I have gone astray like a lost sheep. Seek your servant, for I have not forgotten your commandments. All right, let's go to Jeremiah 50, starting at verse 4 to verse 6. So anytime you stray away from Yahuwah's commandments or whatever, you're what? A lost sheep.
Yirmiyahu or Jeremiah 50 verse 4. In those days and at that time, saith Yahuwah, the children of Yashra'al,
The children of who?
of Yashra'al, Israel, shall come, they and the children of Yahudah or Judah together, going and weeping. They shall go and seek Yahuwah their Elohim.
Okay, then you left somebody out here. You said the children of Yashra'al and the children of Yehudah.
Right?
What about the children of the strangers?
So he left out the other nations in the
Yeah, you left out other nations.
The children of Israel shall come, they and the children of Judah together, going and weeping. They shall go and seek Yahuwah, their Elohim.
Okay, then the children of Israel and Judah together, going and weeping, they shall what? Go and seek their Elohim. And see, this is what we have to bring out stuff like that, because people have lost their minds. This book has always been a book of possession. It shows possessiveness. It's about a groom and his bride. A Savior and his people he came to save. A Redeemer and the people he came to redeem. Go ahead, sir.
Yashra'al 50, verse 5. They shall ask the way to Zion with their faces thitherward, saying, come and let us join ourselves to Yahuwah in a perpetual covenant that shall not be forgotten.
Okay, it said, they shall ask, well, who's the they? Israel. Northern kingdom, southern kingdom. You don't hear anything else about any other nation or people being mentioned right here. And they shall what? Come and let us join ourselves to Yahuwah in a perpetual covenant that shall not be forgotten. Now, listen to what Yahuwah has to say through the mouth of the prophet. Go ahead.
Jeremiah 50, verse 6. My people have been lost sheep. Their shepherds have caused them to go astray. They have turned them away. On the mountains, they have gone from mountain to hill. They have forgotten their resting place.
Moses said, my people have been lost sheep. That lets you know he has a people. And he told you who his people are. The children of Israel. Israel, northern kingdom, and Yahuwah, southern kingdom. Let's go to Yehukanan, or John, the 4th chapter.
Yehukanan, or John 4, verse 1. When therefore Yahuwah knew how the Pharisees had heard that Yahushua HaMashiach made and baptized more disciples than John, though Yahushua HaMashiach himself baptized not, but his disciples, he left Judea and departed again into Galilee. And he must needs go through Samaria. Then cometh he to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near to the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Yahuseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Yahusha, therefore, being weary with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour. There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Yahusha saith unto her, give me to drink. For his disciples were gone away unto the city to buy meat. Then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, how is it that you, being a Yahudim or a Jew, asketh drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. Yahushua HaMashiach answered and said unto her, if thou knewest the gift of Elohim, and who it is that saith to thee, give me to drink, thou wouldest have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water. The woman saith unto him, sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep, from whence then hast thou that living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob or Jacob, which gave us the well and drank thereof himself and his children and his cattle? Yahushua HaMashiach answered and said unto her, Whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. The woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. Yahushua HaMashiach saith unto her, Go, call your husband, and come hither. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Yahushua said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband. For thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not your husband. And that saidest thou truly. The woman saith unto him, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. Our fathers worship in this mountain, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. Yahushua HaMashiach saith unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. Ye worship ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. Elohim is a Ruach, and they that worship him must worship him in the Ruach and in truth. The woman saith unto him, I know that Hamashiach cometh, the Hamashiach cometh, which is called Yahusha. When he is come, he will tell us all things. Yahusha saith unto her, I that speak unto you am he. And upon this came his disciples, and marveled that he talked with the woman. Yet no man said, What seekest thou? Or why talkest thou with her? The woman then left her water pot, and went her way into the city, and saith to the men, Come see a man which told me all things that ever I did. Is not this Hamashiach? Then they went out of the city and came into him. And in the meanwhile, his disciples prayed him, saying, Hamashiach, eat. But he said unto them, I have meat to eat that you know not of. Therefore said the disciples one to another, Have any man brought him out to aught to eat? Continue. Yahushua saith unto them, My meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his work. Say not ye there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest? Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes, and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest.
That's good right there. So verse 34, he said, My meat is what? To do the will of him who has sent me. Who sent him? And to finish his work. So what is that work that he's sent to finish?
Bringing about the
Say it again.
bringing about the Yashra'al back under covenant.
Okay then. Bringing them back, Yashra'al, or bringing them back into covenant relationship. And how does he do that?
Dying.
Okay, by dying? I mean, you can be a little more descriptive on what process of dying. Not you, Moreh.
That's shot and drive by.
So if you tell me that the work was to bring them back to the covenant relationship, what's required for the covenant?
Blood.
The shedding of his blood. There has to be, remember we talked about the covenant? There has to be what? An offer, or proposal, then acceptance, blood ratification, and what? Covenant meal. So he came to bring them back into covenant relations. This is the word that he comes to complete or to finish. Because remember, that was something started at where? Sinai. That went awry with the making of a golden calf, right? Remember, Yashra'al's marriage there was consummated. So, when we look at the passage in Yahoo 4, I'm going to ask all the can to go back up to verse 1 and start reading again. I just want to hit something. I like to see how you obtain information that is very important.
Yahukanan 4 verse 1. Yahukanan 4 verse 1. When therefore Yahuwah knew how the Pharisees had heard that Yahushua HaMashiach made and baptized more disciples than John, though Yahushua HaMashiach himself baptized not, but his disciples, he left Judea and departed again into Galilee.
He left Judea and parted again where? Into Galilee. Why Galilee? That's where the breach was. What breach?
Northern Kingdom?
Okay, Northern Kingdom, but give me a little more information.
The children of Israel.
Okay, children of Israel, but what happened to the children of Israel? Why Galilee? Why was it so important for him to go into Galilee?
Isn't that what a breach was?
That's where the breach was, but you got to tell me what breach. That's the reason why I asked this question, because it's certain things you have to keep in your mind, and it'll keep you on track and keep you with the right understanding. What was one of the most talked about captivities outside of Egypt? Them being in
Babylonian?
the Syrian. It was at Galilee that the Syrians busted up in there and took Northern Kingdom into captivity. So all with them, when you see Galilee, when you're reading the Good News, what we call the New Testament, or whenever you see that word Galilee, always let Assyria come to your mind. That's key. But you don't know when we read the Good News, so much is focused on the house of Israel. When we read this whole passage, was this woman a Samaritan? Oh, she was.
No, she was Israelite.
She was an Israelite. How do we know that? How do we identify it? Yeah, she said my father. And she named her father, Jacob. So when we're looking at that, you got to know that there's a focus on this one group of people. Why? That's why Galilee is so important. If you can make the connection, you know Assyria is always associated with Northern Kingdom. Now let's go over to John 10. John or Yehukanah, the 10th chapter, starting at the first verse. And we'll go down to about the 15th. No, let's go down to 16.
Yehukanah or John 10 verse 1. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that entereth not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. But he that entereth in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the porter openeth, and the sheep hear his voice. And he calleth his own sheep by name, and leadeth them out. And when he putteth forth his own sheep, he goeth before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And a stranger will they not follow, but will flee from him, for they know not the voice of strangers. This parable spake Yashra'al HaMashiach unto them, but they understood not what things they were which he spoke unto them. Then said Yashra'al HaMashiach unto them again, Verily, verily, I say unto you, I am the door of the sheep.
Who's the door?
Yahusha.
Okay.
All that ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. By me, if any man entereth in, he shall be saved, and shall go in and out, and find pasture. The thief cometh not, but for to steal, and to kill, and to destroy. I am come that they might have life, and that they may have it more abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep.
He said, I am the what?
Good shepherd.
Good shepherd. And the good shepherd does what? Giveth his life for the sheep. Hamashiach Yahushua is the good shepherd. He gives his life for the sheep. Just in that verse, that one verse alone, it should give you an understanding of what's going on in the book. So let's see who these sheep are.
Yehukanah or John 10 verse 12. But he that is an harlot, and not the shepherd, whose own the sheep are not, seeth the wolf coming, and leaveth the sheep, and fleeth, and the wolf catcheth them, and scattereth the sheep. The hireling fleeth, because he is an hireling, and careth not for the sheep. And I am the good shepherd, and know my sheep, and am known of mine. As the Father knoweth me, even so am I the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold. Them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd.
Stop right there. He said, other sheep I have. What about them? They're not of this fold. When he said not of this fold, what is that pertaining to?
The house of Judah.
The house of Judah. Because all the Chaldeans from what? Were they not from our southern kingdom? Okay, so other sheep I have, they're not of this fold, but what he said? He said, them also I must bring. So if he said, them also I must bring, that means he has to go and what?
Save them too. Bring them back into the sheepfold.
Right, in order to bring them back into the sheepfold, he has to do what?
Same thing.
You have to go and gather, don't you? He has to go gather these other sheep that are here, but they're not in the fold. But what happened when he gathered the sheep? He said, they shall what? Hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. Now, name one time where you've ever read in the Hebrew Scriptures that the Most High has ever referred to anybody outside of Israel as sheep. You will never, ever, 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 ever find that in the Hebrew Scriptures. This book is very specific. Israel, or the children of Israel, are his sheep. Point blank, period. Nobody else. And this is why we have to go read stuff like this. And it's really simple. But because people have been taught so much madness, they take offense when you personalize a book written about a people and their husband. If I have memoirs, or if I've written something in memory or dedicated to my wife, why would anybody else get offended because they're not mentioned? When I'm talking about the memories I share of our first meeting, the memory I share of our courtship, and how that led to a betrothal and marriage, and then we had children, and I'm just recording our history. Now all of a sudden somebody's reading it and they're offended because I didn't write about them in the book. What kind of sense does that make? I didn't share anything with you. I don't have a history with you. I don't have any memories with you. You might get mentioned if I encountered you and something happened when I encountered you or something. But outside of that, the book is about me and the woman that I love. That's why the other nations are not mentioned. And the only reason, I tell people, they get offended, I said the only reason you hear about Greeks, Romans, and all these people in the book is because Israel encountered them. And because of their wickedness, they went into captivity. The Most High allowed them to be overtaken by these people. That's the only reason they're recorded in this book. The only reason. This book is very personalized. That's why I like the 23rd Psalm for King Dawood, when he talks about that's how all of Israel needs to be. When you read the 23rd Psalm, it's strictly about Dawood and the Father. He said, "Who is my shepherd? I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He restores my soul. He leadeth me." Y'all see how he's talking? That's how we should be talking. When it comes to the book called, they want to call, quote unquote, the Bible or the Hebrew Scriptures, this is how we're supposed to approach it and take it, because it's written to us. And this is why we have to do these type lessons, because when you get over to the good news, over what commonly known as the New Testament, people have gone awry. They have no understanding of what they're reading. It's just as soon as I get through Isaiah 53, we're going to go tackle the good news. We're going to deal with the Messianic teachings. We're going to deal with the New Testament. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to read them and we're going to walk them back to Torah. That way people can get the correct understanding. He did not die for anybody but Israel. If death was required for the first covenant, bloodshed, if we broke that covenant in order for it to be renewed, guess what's going to be required? Death. Blood ratification again. The same people then, the same people at that time. This has nothing to do with the nations. And I keep telling people, let me tell y'all something. You need the nations. You have no business sweeping and mopping as kings and queens. You need the nations. You have no business digging and hoarding gardens and growing. No, you need the nations. Let me tell you how it works. Get Isaiah, the 14th chapter for me. Did Israel come out of Mizraim as a mixed multitude? They had other nations with them, didn't they? Did not those nations sojourn with Israel over 40 years in the wilderness? They sure did. And y'all remember that lesson I did on the strangers? The Most High spoke some when he spoke to Joshua before they entered into that land. I told y'all about the strangers, right? And I said there was one stranger that had a very favorable standing in the Most High eyes. That was the girl. 16:16 in the Hebrew. What did the Most High tell Joshua before they entered into Canaan land? He said, the stranger that sojourned with you, he said, take them and possess them for handmaids and servants in the land. Do y'all know what stranger that was? It was the girl. So if that stranger has a favorable standing, and he's going to be servants, handmaids and servants, what do you think the other one's standing? That's their salvation. I know people don't want to hear this. It's better than what you could have. And we have to stop shucking and jiving with this book, scared to tell the truth. We're only saying what's in here. But anyway, read that 14. We're going to see the same thing. Because watch what happens now. Because the book, the book has to line up, y'all. It can't be one thing over here and something else told on the other side.
That's right.
But Moreh, what would be the good news to a nation that's already ruling?
I know. It's not the good news to a nation that's already ruling. The good news is for the people who were in need of hearing something that were going to uplift them.
Right.
Of people that were oppressed, suppressed, depressed. It was good news for them. And I keep telling y'all, when you're looking at what's going on in Jerusalem, I said, you know the Romans are ruling, they have occupied Jerusalem. It would have been impossible for Hamashiach, Yehukanah, or anybody else to go up in that land with the Romans ruling, talking about their kingdom and him being a king. He would have never been able to finish his work. Because they were already trying to kill him. Did not they walk Hamashiach to a cliff, getting ready to push him off, and he had to disappear? It was just that dangerous for them. They done gave y'all a picture of Hamashiach there with this Jesus mess. They done gave y'all this. It wasn't that easy up in Jerusalem, y'all. That's why when you even going back to the book of Galatians, it's so important to know what's going on in Galatians, in the book of Galatians. You got Jews, and I'm going to get back to that. You got the Yahudim, the Pharisees now, who have made what? A pact with the Romans. Yeah. Do you not know in Jerusalem, if you were outside of those that were in that pact, you could not sell and you could not have any kind of service pertaining to your culture. That's what's going on in Jerusalem. Now, you got Northern Kingdom coming in. Now these people are trying to what? Hear the Besorah, the good news. Now they're trying to return. But guess what the only problem is? They're outside of that pact made with the Romans. And they had put out a decree, if you were caught doing those things, you were put to death. Right. And we're going to get into a little history on that, and we're going to cover that whole thing. We're going to do some reading historically from writings and get a thorough understanding of what the law is in Jerusalem at that time. and what that pact is, what it's called, and why it's so important for Galatians, you're going to see. Because these people running up in there, they were trying to keep you getting put to death. Because what do you see? Do you think the Pharisees or the Yahudi, they were accepting them with open arms?
No. That's right. Because remember, they said that we have to quiet down this insurrection here.
Yes.
Because if not, we will lose our place.
We will lose our what?
We will lose our
Place with who?
Yeah, with the Romans.
With the Romans.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on there. That's why I say historically, we have to be abreast upon this information so you can thoroughly understand what's going on. Yashra'al 14.
Yashra'al or Isaiah 14 verse 1. For Yahuwah will have mercy on Jacob or Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land, and the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob.
What strange is that? 16:16, girl. That's that one that has a favorable position in the Most High God, right? And what the Most High said, treat them like one what? Born in the land? Okay, keep reading.
Verse 2. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place. And the house of Yashra'al shall possess them in the land of Yahuwah for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were. And they shall rule over their oppressors.
Stop right there. Is that not the same thing happening again? Because you know, this is what he gathered Israel. Israel now fixing to enter back into a covenant. Israel going back to their land. But the strangers, now read that again, that first verse. Because now these same strangers, they have done what? They have latched hold. And they're going to sojourn again with you. So let me tell you something. Me and Moreh say that all the time. There's nothing new under the sun. If it happened one way here, it has to happen the same way here. The Most High is not all over the place.
No. I think it goes with the mindset is that Yahuwah has, is that this is the way it's supposed to be because this is what I called it to be. You guys gonna switch this thing up and change it to the point to where now they're considered the same as we are. But I have said, Yahuwah, this is the way it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
And so at the end of the day, this is how it's gonna be, whether you like it or not.
And I always forget that scripture. He said he got to make everything right side up again.
Right.
Because it has been flipped.
Right. So that just blows me away that I'm reading it because he said this is how it's supposed to be from the beginning. You messed it up. I'm going to change it back. You see, it don't have nothing to do with you guys. It ain't against you guys in any kind of way. This is how it's going to be. Okay?
Exactly.
This is the best position you can have. Take it or leave it. Exactly.
And that bothers me so much. I'm like, I might be crazy. These people have done so. I'm talking about all the nations. See, and that's what I was explaining to somebody. I said, this woman talking about giving $100 billion in reparations to us as a people. I said, that's not even a drop in a bucket. And I said, well, we get caught up at, we'll look at it and think that's something. You know why the Most High can't go with that? Because it was not just one group of people that did this dirt to you. He's getting it from all nations, not one. That's why he has to get it. Because he's going to get it from all of them.
If you look at the cost throughout the last 400 years or whatever, well, first of all, the land in Jerusalem. I mean, the land in all of Palestine. But that land was the promised land. What would be the price of that land? Now you're talking about the Native Americans who are considered Israelite over here in America. What would be the cost of the land here in America? See, just the land alone. And that was produced throughout all the years. Now what you did to the 100 and something million slaves that you brought over here, and the 100 200-something million Native Americans that you killed. You see, look at that. We haven't even talked about the blood that's being required.
Exactly.
You see?
And another thing I'm getting to is, because people have a bad misunderstanding when it comes to these Native Americans. And I've always kind of had an issue with it because we want to look at a people and want to identify them with being Israel because we don't understand history.
Mm-hmm.
Before the so-called, what we look at as Native Americans, Israel was already here.
Right.
And it wasn't those people that you're looking at, those are Mongols there.
That's good. Exactly.
And that's why when they took Israel that was already here,
Mm-hmm.
but see, what you have to realize, our people were actually taken from America back to Spain and throughout Europe, and then to the continent of Africa. Now, some were already there in Africa, but there was a remnant of our people that had already came here. And so, when you go to the Library of Congress, and they start talking about the Aborigines, who we want to call Indians, the Negroid Indians, straight black, North America, South America, Central America, Negroid. Now, when you see the Mongols, who comes across the Bering Strait, because I know a lot of people don't believe in that theory or the Bering Strait that they could travel, they did. But there were people here when they got here. These were the people that they began to kill off and stuff and take back to Europe and Spain. Then took some back to Africa. And this was before the triangular trade began. And so that's why we need to look into that history too, because there's a group of our people who credit in history has been given to Native Americans.
Right.
Y'all talking about Attila the Hun people.
Mm-hmm.
And see, that's another history that people don't talk about, how the Huns and different ones made it over here. And if you look at the so-called people that reside in our land today, their lineage even goes back to the Huns. And so that history is very important. But if you notice in Isaiah 14, it carries the same theme of when we came out of Mizraim, the strangers that were with them, even though they had a favorable position in the Most High, they still went into that land as servants and slaves. It's the same thing this time. And my thought was, I knew what I was getting before I went on a tantrum. These people have done so much wickedness and have done so much dirt. You got to know people's minds are messed up to where out of all that they've done, they actually believe they can go into the kingdom or what they would call heaven and walk hand in hand like ain't nothing happened.
Yeah.
No kind of retribution, no kind of payback, or no kind of reaping of any sort.
It's good that you say that, Moreh, because the guy out there in Virginia, they found him in his, I think it's his college yearbook. He was dressed in blackface, and I guess a couple of his friends was dressed up as Ku Klux Klansmen and all this other stuff. The government, he was government, right, exactly.
Yeah.
This is important. They said now is that 58%, a little over 58% of the black churches in Virginia has forgiven this guy.
That's what?
They forgave him.
That's ridiculous.
There's a brother that is teaching, do not to mention his name, is that Antiochus Epiphanes, right on his deathbed, okay, said, listen, you know what, you guys are the real Israelites, right before he died. And so everything should be good. So you know that whole concept. You can do all the hell that you want to do. All right, and then on your deathbed, all right, you can ask for forgiveness, and then you and I, okay, can walk hand in hand. there's no there's no restitutions or payback with anything. I mean, this thing of forgiveness in Jesus said in the Bible that we have to forgive. And so that mindset again, that our people are willing, okay, just to forgive, let bygones be bygones. But we had to pay. We had to pay. So
Wow.
I think they call it like Stockholm syndrome.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's terrible. If the enemy can't go, I don't want to go to the kingdom.
Yeah.
And that dude's nickname back in school was Cool Man. Like he was so, that's what he did. Like that was his thing. He was known for dressing up in blackface and that type of thing. Like his nickname was Cool Man. Like that's what they call him.
Yeah, so and that's what we're dealing with. Let me tell you something. You might call yourself forgiven, but the Most High don't forget.
Right.
So he's gonna get. He said, "Shall they give me recompense?" He's gonna get his. I don't know why people. He done told us that though you walk hand in hand with the wicked, for the wicked shall not go unpunished. He don't care how much you love him. Because you know, we Israel, we become life preserve and bulletproof vests and everything for people.
Yeah, we do.
We'll just jump right on out there, I mean. And see how they treat you. Isaiah 29 and 16.
Yashra'al, or Isaiah 29 verse 16. Surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay. For shall the work say of him that made it, he made me not? Or shall the thing framed say of him that framed it, he had no understanding?
Okay. So you can see what's going on here. Let's jump to Yehukanah 5 and 36 right quick.
Yehukanah 5 verse 36. But I have greater witness than that of Yehukanah, for the works which the Father hath given me to finish, the same works that I do bear witness of me, that Aliyahu hath sent me.
He said, for the works which the Father has given me to finish, the same work that I do bear witness of me, that the Father has sent me. So he came to bring the Israel back into covenant relationship. And before Israel can go into covenant relationship, the two houses have to be what? Reunited or joined back together. And made one stick. So we know the precepts of John is Ezekiel 37. And we're not going to go there because all of us are familiar with Ezekiel 37. If you're not, those out there viewing us by way of social media, we read John the 10th chapter earlier, and the precepts of that about making the two folds, one fold and he being their shepherd, is Ezekiel the 37th chapter. Talks about the two sticks or the two houses being made one again. And when we look at that, we have to see why that is important. Let's look at Luke, the first chapter, verse 31, 32, and 33.
Luke 1 verse 31. And behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb, and bring forth a son, and shall call his name Yashra'al. He shall be great, and he shall be called the Son of the Highest. Luke 1 verse 31. And behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb, and bring forth a son, and shall call his name Yashra'al. He shall be great, and shall be called the Son of the Highest. And Yahuwah Elohim shall give unto him the throne of his father David. And he shall reign over the house of Jacob or Jacob forever. And of his kingdom there shall be no end.
Now, what we're looking at is, in Luke it said, behold, you shall conceive in your womb, and bring forth a son, and shall call his name Yahusha. In other words, Yahuwah's salvation, or Yahuwah's salvation. And who is Yahuwah coming to save? Yashra'al, the nation of Israel. And it said, he shall be great and shall be called the Son of the Highest. And Yahuwah Elohim shall give unto him the throne of his father Daud, and shall reign over the house of who? The house of Jacob, whose name was changed to what? Israel. So, the house of Jacob is who?
House of Jacob. That's both of them together.
That's both of them together. The whole house of Jacob. The house of Jacob is all 12 tribes together. How do we know that?
Jacob had 12 sons.
Jacob had 12 sons. But what out of one of these verses will give us that, though? What did he say after he would rule over the house of Jacob?
Yeah, because Jacob actually got 10, and Joseph had 2.
And he said, forever, he said he would what? Reign over the house of Jacob forever, and his kingdom, there should be no end. So when we read about the kingdom last week, we read about what? 4 walls surround the kingdom? In those walls, 3 gates? And inscribed in those gates were what? The names of the 12 tribes of Israel. So his kingdom has to do with who? Yashra'al, Israel. And he's going to reign what? Over the house of Israel, or the house of Jacob, or the nation of Israel forever. And there will be no what? No end to his kingdom. So what we see here is we have consistently gone through all of these scriptures, starting with the covenant, moving all the way forward from lesson 1 all the way up into this one, and it has been consistently Israel. We've identified Israel and show how when you approach this book the right way or the correct way, you know it's about Israel. We're not being biased in our teachings when we say certain things. We're not being prejudiced. Most people have not read the scriptures this way. They've only taken what they've heard passed down through the institutional or the religious institutions for decades, for centuries, and just ran with that. But you can't do that. You have to sit down and begin to read and study things out for yourself. And so that's what we want to do with this teaching. And we're going to close this out at that time, and without, moving forward, just always think this way and always approach the scriptures like this. And so, like I said, starting in our next teaching, we're going to deal with Isaiah 53. And we're going to show how it pertains to Hamashiach and the nation of Yashra'al. And it should show the importance and help us to start looking at things from the right perspective, to show how important the work of Hamashiach is. And after we get through Isaiah 53, if you have some kind of messianic ideas or whatever, or something telling you to lean toward that way, it's going to be hard for you to do. Yeah, it's going to be hard for you to do that. Because I know we're not reading this book right. You tell me somebody said they non-Messianic, I said, you couldn't understand what you're reading. There's no way you can read this book and call yourself a non-Messianic. And Isaiah 53 is the key to understanding what's going on. Both halves of the book, the front half and the back half. It's Isaiah 53. But like I said, in order to understand Isaiah, what's going on there, you got to go back to Leviticus. That's why it's so important that, and I'm telling y'all as students of the Word, it's very important that the lessons that we do, that you pay very close attention. And just try to gather, just go home and look at the videos and study this stuff. Because I did a lesson back, it's been a few months back, we were talking about the covenants and the different offerings. You have to understand the offerings in order to understand what's going on in Isaiah 53 and Leviticus. If Hamashiach said he's the volume of the book is written of him, you have to understand everything that's going on. You have to have everything to go. They weren't just taking up all, sacrificing all these animals for nothing. Everyone, the pigeons, the doves, everything had a certain purpose.
Absolutely.
But if you understand and know the purpose behind them, it's impossible not to see Hamashiach. It's impossible. So we're going to go into this stuff, and we're going to look at it. As soon as we get through with Isaiah 53, then we're going to start going to the Messianic teachings, and we're going to get some understanding of what's going on in Ephesians, what's going on in Galatians, all of these different places. These letters of Shaul, they were going out to these assemblies for a reason. Why were they going out to these assemblies? What was happening in the backdrop? Most times, you ever notice how when we read the book of Ephesians, we just start reading? Nobody ever going to look up and see what's the history of Ephesus? What is going on during this time? If you go get an understanding of the history and what's going on, all of Shaul's letters and epistles make all the sense in the world. But nobody has ever told us to do that. We just pick up and start reading. But if you don't know the history of what's going on at that time, a lot of stuff is not going to make sense. Me and one big bro were having a conversation. It might have been yesterday, or I think it was yesterday, and we was talking about circumcision. And I was saying, I said, we have to get a better understanding of circumcision. I said, now, circumcision was attached to the Abrahamic covenant, am I right? Mm-hmm. The Abrahamic covenant, even with that, when it was passed on to Israel, when they entered into that covenant, did they not circumcise? They did. As from Sinai all the way until Joshua, before they entered into that land, how often did Israel circumcise? Y'all help me out. What happened when Joshua and them got to go into that land? What did
They had to circumcise.
It had to circumcise, so they had been what? 40 years. Nobody had circumcised in 40 years. You ever ask yourself why? You can't circumcise that broken covenant. Y'all got quiet on me then. Why weren't they circumcised in the wilderness? Do y'all know how many males were born in the wilderness?
Millions.
And no circumcision for 40 years? because the covenant that required circumcision had been broken. You can't circumcise to a broken covenant. Okay, then well, why did they circumcise before they went into the land? They weren't circumcised in that covenant. It had became a right to enter into the land then. But we're going to go into that too, just as well, because I keep telling y'all, Apostle Shaul ain't crazy. He's not crazy at all. We're not understanding. And I'm going to tell y'all something. I was praying and talking to the Most High, and I said, now I'm fixing to do something. I'm finna ruffle a lot of feathers. I already know, but you know what? I'm grown enough to ruffle. Because one thing about when the Most High puts something on my heart and give me the understanding, when he tells me to do it, now I wrestled with things for a long time. But when he said, now's the time to do it, I don't care who comes before me. I guarantee I got scripture to back everything I say. All I can say is get ready for a ride. And we gonna ride. And I don't know why the Most High has laid this on my heart so heavily. When I tell you we really diminish the value of what Hamashiach did for us, we don't have any earthly idea of what he did for us. Out of all of creation or whatever, everybody else is born to do what? Live. You don't find the strength that he came to die? He was already living. He came to die. The total opposite of man. You're born to live. You coming to this earth, you coming out of something, you coming into life to live. He came to die. Why? We done got so caught up over fringes and tassels and all this stuff. I mean, I'm telling y'all, we're missing him. When he speaks about how Yashra'al missed the day of that visitation, we're about to be just like him. I know I'm on the right track because I can hear a pin fall. Stuff I said, a rat pee on cotton.
I never heard that.
That's not the first thing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Never heard of
Yeah.
But let's take a little light walk. And we're going to tread, when I said we're going to thoroughly start getting into some history, we're going to thoroughly start. That's one thing I like about Moreh. He would go into those Hebrew words on you. And we got to do more because we're fixing to see something. And that's why Moreh sent me a video, and we both were kind of, it wasn't funny, but we were both kind of disturbed about what we were hearing on the Isaiah 53. And the one young man, he was right, but he just didn't know how to thoroughly convey his message or explain Isaiah 53. So it almost looked like the other guy, or the non-Messianic, kind of had an upper hand on him a little bit, but I'm like, wow. And I said, I wasn't going to bother. It's just certain things in the rough. He just won't let me leave it alone. I got to deal with that one, y'all. I got to deal with that one. But I found out through my study and preparing for that, it just took me somewhere else. I'm like, man, now we got to even go back and deal with some other stuff to make sense in the Messianic. Because it's so much that's going on there with Hamashiach. Mm-hmm. It's so much going on at Calvary. Y'all. And it's so many things that are being done. And you're reading it, it sounds like a nice script or movie, but it's deep. It all goes back. It all goes back. That's why he said it's written of me. That was, the Torah is beautiful. Everything that he was trying to teach them with all the animal, with all the blood, the sacrifice and the duties of the priesthood. He was trying to show him the importance of him, what he was going to be, how important he was to them. He was going to fulfill it all. And like we were talking earlier, when they walked Hamashiach to that cliff, why y'all thought they walked him to that cliff?
You know what, Moreh? I'll let somebody else answer.
Can we read that? 'Cause I've never heard that before. I knew that they were crowding and they were going to get him, and he walked through them.
He disappeared.
They disappeared and walked through them, but I didn't know he was on the cliff.
Yeah, they were going to push him over the cliff.
I didn't get that.
At what time in Yashra'al's ventures of sacrifice and stuff like that, and offerings, is there a cliff involved?
I think it was when the sin offering with the goat.
Or the guilt offering?
Mm-hmm.
And they did what?
And because the father stopped accepting the offering, so they would just throw the animal over.
Did they push the animal over the cliff?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
But it wasn't time for him to die. That's why he disappeared. Were you finna get that more?
In Matthew?
Oh, you got it?
No, that's where is that?
In the book of Leviticus, the 16th chapter, what's important is that we understand what these rites, or what was going on with these rituals here. Like for example, when you go to the book of Leviticus, the 16th chapter, I did a class on this maybe about 6-7 years ago. And just read down just a little bit. The 16th chapter, verse 1. It says, "And the father spoke unto Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron, when they offered before the father and died. And the father said unto Moses, Speak unto Aaron, the Aharon, thy brother, that he come at all times in the set-apart place within the veil, before the mercy seat, which is upon the ark, that he die not. For I will appear in the cloud upon the mercy seat." Because we have the two cherubims now that are actually in a prostrating position over the mercy seat. "Then shall Aharon come," this is where it gets interesting at. "Then shall Aharon come into the set-apart place with a young bullock for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. And he should put on the set-apart linen coat, and he should have the linen breeches upon his flesh, and he should be girded with a linen girdle, and with the linen a mitre shall be attired. These are set-apart garments, wherefore shall he wash his flesh in water, and so shall put them on. And he should take of the congregation of the children of Yashra'al 2 kids of the goats for a sin offering, and one ram for a burnt offering. And Aaron shall offer his bullock of the sin offering which is upon himself, and make an atonement for himself and for his house. And he should take the 2 goats now, and present them before the Father at the door of the congregation. And he shall cast lots upon these 2 goats. One lot has the service for the Father, and the other one has the lot for the scapegoat. Just like when it was presented to Israel, who should we let go? Should we let go the Mashiach, or should we let go Barnabas? The word Barnabas means the son of the Father. But Barnabas now, he was actually about to be killed because he was guilty of insurrection. But then that Israel had this ceremony where every year to let something go, they actually now let go Barnabas. But we have here now a ritual that the Levites were doing. One goat goes into the wilderness. The other goat presents himself to the Father. You brought out in the book of, I think it was John the 5th chapter, where it talked about, I almost lost my train of thought, where my work is greater than that of John.
Yes.
His testimony is greater than that. So what was now the testimony that the Mashiach had that was greater than John? These two goats now, one goes into the wilderness. This one goat goes into the wilderness and prepares the way for the goat that comes after him. It had gotten to the point in history now, it talks about where the goat would go out into the wilderness, and that was a sign of him taking the sins away from Israel. But it got to the point, I mean, can you imagine? That goat was coming back.
That's right.
So, so everybody got afraid, but that was a sign now, is that the sins were not forgiven.
Exactly.
And it was also like a scarlet, like a towel, and it would be red. And it got to the point now in history, this is what they're saying now, is that it got to the point where it was not turning white anymore, which made it the forgiveness of sins.
But watch this, and then I'll let you go, Moreh. It says, and Aaron shall cast lots upon the two goats, and one lot for the father, and the other lot for the scapegoat. And Aaron shall bring the goats which the father's lot fell on, and offer him for a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell to the scapegoat shall present it alive for the father to make an atonement with him, and to let him go out into the wilderness. But without going through everything here, I just wanted to share the two importance of the goats, and what one goat had to do, what the other goat had to do. And so when we begin to look at the functions of what the Aaronic priesthood were doing, it is impossible to say that the Mashiach never existed.
I mean, it's impossible.
It's just impossible. You look at the ark, you look at the 6 loaves that were divided, and then you had the menorah sitting in the middle, and where the priest now will get the ashes now from off the altar now, and then every 7th day there would be a turn of now the priest now, because you have the 24 courses. All of that is I mean, without
Right.
it's impossible. It's simply impossible.
Yep.
So, like you said, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a
whole
lot. But you're going to have to really, really study, just like the Moreh was bringing out, about the cup. In drinking the cup, I must do my Father's will. And again, this is something that the Father needed for the groom, the Mashiach, to do. And we as men, knowing, is that everything, let me back up a little bit. At the end of the day, everything goes back to the Father. The Mashiach must present his bride to the Father. Now, as we were growing up, there might have been some little wild girls that we was messing with,
Right.
But we would never bring those girls home to meet mommy or your daddy. You know what? You can't, because they were wild, loose girls.
Right.
So it's like now, there's absolutely no way in the world that the Father, or the Mashiach now can present the nation of Israel to the Father. Because just like you said, Ezekiel 16 chapter, she's filthy.
That's right.
That would be an embarrassment to bring an adulterated woman that's been sleeping around with everybody home to meet your parents. You can't do it.
Yep.
So like you said, this is all personal. This is a personal love story between the groom and the bride, and reconciling that relationship.
Most definitely.
Yeah, so that was it.
Hallelujah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, I don't know if we wanted to start at.
Go about 3 or 4 verses.
We still didn't get the.
I have it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I got it. Let me see. Let me see where I can start at. Okay, I'll start at 24. How about that? Luke 4, verse 24. And he said, verily I say unto you, no prophet is accepted in his own country. But I tell you of a truth, many widows were in Israel in the days of Elias, when Shamayim or heaven was shut up 3 years and 6 months, when great famine was throughout all the land. But unto none of them was Elias sent, save unto Sarepta, a city of Sidon, unto a woman that was a widow. And many lepers were in Israel in the time of Eliseus the prophet, and none of them was cleansed, save Naaman the Syrian. And all they in the synagogue, when they heard these things, were filled with wrath, and rose up and thrust him out of the city, and led him into the brow of the hill wherein the city was built, that they may cast him down headlong. But he, passing through the midst of them, went his way. So he's gone.
I've never read that. Throw the brother over the cliff.
Trying to toss him.
Yeah, they was gonna toss him. So yeah, so that's Luke 4. You can start at 24 down to like 30. But yeah, that's it. They was gonna toss him.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Even with something like that, you notice how even with the 2 goats that the Most High, Moreh was talking about, how you always have an innocent who is punished for the iniquities of a guilty,
Mm-hmm.
and the guilty is let free, and the innocent die.
Yep.
Hamashiach did a whole lot. Let me tell y'all something. When you see him walking through healing people and all that, that wasn't for free. All that was costing something. All of that was costing something. It was going to be that stake that he would be nailed upon and stricken with. When I tell you, I don't even know if there's enough ink, lead, pencil, and paper to even record all the things that he did for Yashra'al.
Absolutely.
I don't even think we understand, the length and depth that he went through for us as a people. That's why, let me tell you something. It'll be very hard to stand before him. You know, it just has to be out of his love and stuff for us that he allows to. That's why Shaul, and it's so crazy. Me and Moreh talk about it all the time, how even Hamashiach, he talks about the covenant, he remembered the covenant, or the Father, I said, he remembered the covenant that he made with Abraham. That's very important. And we forget we're a covenant people. But y'all find it strange that we put more emphasis on the law than we do the covenant? And everything is about the covenant, but our focus is the law. I hear Israelites on Facebook, YouTube, they just run up on our people on the streets. If they don't have a beard, they ain't got no fringes, I'm like, this is the people who have really missed it. They really don't know what's going on. They have no earthly idea of what's going on.
Oh, they kind of what the Pharisees and Sadducees were doing. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. When you begin to talk about all the things that the Father sent the Son to do, and he accomplished everything. And like you said, there's not enough ink, there's not enough paper, there's not enough lead, okay, to write down and record everything that the Mashiach went through and the stress that he was under. I forget the name of the condition but the type of stress that the Mashiach was under, where it can cause a chemical change within inside of your body where you can actually sweat blood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can sweat blood. I mean, you're talking about stress, not being received of the people that you were sent to redeem. And I'll put it from this perspective. The way that Aish loves his Isha, and for her not to acknowledge his role and his position, and we then get to the point where the Mashiach is now, well, if it be your will to take this cup away from me, is because the Mashiach walking amongst his bride, and they not understanding the day of their redemption. And if we had to put this in layman's terms and turn off the cameras and everything like that, we're talking about you no good mother, blah, 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 beep, beep, beep.
Yeah.
Because we are a rough people. I tell my Isha all the time, the way that the Father speaks with me might be different than the way that he speaks with you.
That's right.
Because the Father, like, you no good nut, asshole. Didn't I tell you to do X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
Because all of that, well, it's okay. It's all right. No, it's the Father is pissed at Israel. And I don't think that people really understand that. Whenever it gets to the point where you and I have to make a decision, okay, to eat our children,
Wow.
that's anger.
That's anger.
Yeah.
Whenever the Father now, again, we had to, listen, when the Father now is having that adversary now, just like Zacchaeus and I have talked about, where he's not even taking pity on women, the same amount of anger that he has with the men, he has with the women. When we see now the adversary putting food on a woman's pregnant belly, okay, and having the dogs now eat the food just eat up all of this, the whole 9 yards. That's anger. That should be enough for us today to say, listen, you know what? The Father's not playing. Bobbing for apples, okay, having us out in the lake, all right, and shooting the apples off of your head, feeding crocodiles, our newborn babies.
Right.
All these things here that's happening, and you can't totally submit to Torah. I'm like, wow, that's really something. And the Mashiach again, he said, well, listen, you know what, Father, I mean, put yourself there, Father. If it be your will, but I'm down here with these Negroes here. These stepping, fetching, blah, blah, blah. Just like what Abu was sharing with me, we was talking about what's going on in the internet. We had the Mashiach's elite, the 12, all right? And making sure that we understand what's going on with inside of a person. So Abu brought it out nicely. He was like, listen, what about Judas? I mean, this guy, man, betrayed the Mashiach with a kiss. Wow. You know what? You see, we walked all this time. Even David said, you know what? It wasn't an enemy that betrayed me, but it was a man that I broke bread with. He came to my house. We sat down to break bread together. This man looked me dead in my eyes. Dead in my eyes. Well, that sister looked me dead in my eyes. And guess what happened? Betrayed him. Even Peter was like, I told you no good mother, blah, 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 blah. I don't know this man. Yeah, that was you. Now you was hanging out with the Mashiach. Hell to the no.
That's it. We missed it right there. Two more. I mean, even with that, it's a reason why Yahuwah introduced HaMashiach as the Lamb.
Yeah.
And if you go back to Leviticus and get an understanding of why that lamb and the sacrifice was so important. You know, when the priests, when they got a lamb, you know, they didn't just get lamb, you know, there is something as a purchasing price. You purchase a lamb.
Yeah.
Judas didn't just give up Hamashiach for free.
No. You got paid.
So when we look at that, let's go back and look at the whole ritualistic rites of what they had to do. And you'll understand why he was so, why? Because 53 said he was led to what? The slaughter. Like a lamb, he was led to the slaughter. Okay then, all that's important. Let's follow that whole thing out and see what's the duty of the priest, and what's his responsibility, how they obtained this lamb, what had to happen with the lamb once they obtained him, until he gets to that point where he's slaughtered and sacrificed. And you know it can be done where? In the set apart place. They didn't did they sacrifice Hamashiach? Was he streaming stuff inside the city? Or was he on the outside?
He was on the outside.
He was on the outside. Why was he on the outside? All of that's very important to know.
So, all right, I mean, we have the book of the law and the book of the covenant. Each item was placed in different.
Y'all know the altars were inside the holy, the set apart place. That stuff was outside. So if it's the same thing, then he had to be outside. Y'all know Jerusalem was set apart. Oh, I'm going in.
No, Coach T.
Oh, y'all forget you, Coach T. I didn't get you.
She like, I'm just waiting patiently.
Go ahead, help yourself.
I just wanted to say that when you going back to when you say when a man doesn't have a beard, or if you're not wearing fringes, or you're not dressed a certain way, how we attack people. I can't remember who it was, but they asked Hamashiach, what's the greatest commandment? And it was like love. Love yourself. Love the Father first and foremost. And love. And I think that's what we forget. When we say, I follow Torah, what does that mean, that you follow Torah? Because I need to know. Torah is love. Torah teaches you discipline. Torah teaches you how to be clean. And people don't even know that Torah teaches you how to be clean so that you don't spread disease. Torah teaches you so many things. So when you say you follow Torah, what is it that you're following in Torah? And I find it interesting that a lot of times the things that our parents taught us, we seem to put that aside when we come into this truth. And my parents always told me and my sister, and even my brother when he came, that if you can't love each other, how you go outside the house and then talk about you love so and so and so and so, when you can't even start here in the house. And so people don't get it. We would get, if I was abusive to my sister or she was abusive to me, when I'm talking about fighting each other, it was, okay, since you don't know how to act with one another, now you can't go outside. You don't move. You're in a no movement position until you understand how to treat each other. Because when you treat each other well, you're actually following Torah. You're actually showing that you love the Father. So when we say we follow Torah, people need to unpack that and investigate what that means.
Exactly.
That's good.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Well, that's it. Somebody.
Any questions dealing with the lesson? We got to throw that in there, right?
Dealing with the lesson.
Dealing with the lesson. Okay.
No, this is good, and I'm excited just to see what's about to come.
Yeah.
You know, that Isaiah 53, the next lesson, got me, this one here got me on the edge of my seats.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, that's gonna be a very interesting lesson that Moreh is gonna do. I find it interesting that people, you know, they can't see a Mashiach in the Old Testament. When, just like how the scripture says, there's no new thing under the sun.
Right.
Yashra'al, John, Yehochanan, and these brothers, we're doing what they've been doing. We're talking about centuries ago. I mean, they've been teaching Hamashiach from the Old Testament because there was no New Testament. There was no New Testament, so they were actually showing Hamashiach in the Old Testament.
Absolutely.
You understand? Right. I mean, we're doing the same thing, but people can't see that.
Absolutely.
You know, you know, I find it interesting that, you know, people can't make that connection that, you know, they've been doing this, you know, for centuries, you know.
Yeah, man.
And you know, you know, we're doing the same thing. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and I'm quite sure we won't see Hezekiah in there. You know what I'm saying? I'm quite sure we won't see that. So yeah.
That's it for me. More you got today?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed today's lesson. As always.
Oh yeah.
Now we can get back on track.
Oh yeah.
That's good.
I think it's good that you're bringing out the a lot of this New Testament, because I think when you listen to a lot of the Israelites on TV, they sound angry, I mean, they're doing some stuff that is. I'm not going to say it's wrong, because I think it's right what they're doing. Because sometimes they're doing it the wrong way. So I think being able to show what the Messiah's role is, because I don't hear a lot of people teaching about that. What you're about to teach. I mean, I don't hear it. You know, they're teaching about the Father, but they're not teaching about the Son. They're definitely not teaching about the Son of our Spirit. So all that is stuff that needs to be brought out.
Hallelujah. So at this time, we are going to stand. We're going to have the blowing of the shofar. As far as I can, the Aliyahu. We're going to ask Aki, Zabu, Yahu to pray us on out of here.
Aliyahu, we come to thanking you and praising you for another dynamic lesson from Moreh, Heavenly Father. Pray that you would continue to write it upon our hearts so that we can meditate on it and lead this life that you want us to live, and be a light to others so that they may see the truth that you have for us. Pray that you would continue to walk us with this rest of the week, that your Spirit would just lead us and guide us, and bring us back here again for another Shabbat lesson. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Yes.
Yeah, Coty is one. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Coty
Well, did you stop that, bro?
No.